Hi, how's it going? I know it's been some time since I last posted on this. Today we're going to go over a business use case, but before that, I meant to come back to this question here, which kind of I didn't really kind of go through fully, but just was something that I thought was kind of cool. The average salary of our finance teams. You might just recognize this table just from the last video I made on the averages, average F and average Fs. So essentially, just what the issue was I was selecting the entire column, column A, for the criteria range, and then I only selected C2 through C22 for the budget proposal. The thing is, though, that when you do a sum if like that, it the rows in your criteria range that match your criteria, um, wherever there is a true value, it will sort of like it will only look at that row in um, your sum range, or in this case, your average range that you want to compile your budgets together and find the average of. So just to repeat, sort of like what the error was, I had an average if, and then for the range, I selected the team here, column AA. The criteria I put in finance, and the average range I put in C2 through C22. Now, this would not give me the correct answer because, as you can see, for the first row, for the first row in column A, I have team, so that would be false. But that corresponds to the 300,000 here, which is the first row. Finance, this is true for the second row, so that would give me 150,000. But this is a different. This 150,000 is actually for human resources, not for finance. But in the mind of this function here, like these both start in the same place. So it's just important to make sure that your ranges look nearly identical. So I'll just show, like if I press enter, this figure is incorrect because if I select finance for all places where I have finance, so finance here, the average is 225, but here I have half of that. When actually, if I select the human resources though, which is the row right underneath where all the finance teams are, I get 12,500, which or 112,500, which is what this figure is. So just kind of an important tip that I thought I want to just include real quick. So that is that. Now to the business use case. So I just sort of a little bit of background context. I tutor Excel just on the side, and just with the permission of like one of my students who's like a working professional. I asked him if it was okay to kind of model something based off like the work we do together, just with like completely made up information. And I thought this would be kind of cool. So I have like this. The end product is what we have here. We want to create a calculation worksheet which shows by office ID, office name, the total expenses for a certain company across all the different offices and the branches, along with how many dollars goes to someone who works in operations versus corporate, along with a percentage of total expenses that gets allocated to each team member. And also, I have like this one invoice amount here, which is which I just call the calc invoice, just for one simple, just made up figure. I thought just for travel bills that we would, like we'd only get, say like we only get one invoice for this company, just regarding travel, right? And we need to allocate this out to different members of our different employees who work in this company. But we can't do that just immediately. Like we only get this one invoice and nothing else. Then the way that we actually have to do that is we have to do some sort of allocation operation, which will be dependent on this data right here, which actually catalogs the expenses by person, by office, along with different office IDs, and whether or not that employee is operations or staff member. So we're going to get right to it. The first thing, whenever I receive, whenever we receive new information, new data, we have to kind of clean it up a bit. So just kind of to go through the steps and to really, get you in this sort of shoes of what we do. I'm going to insert a pivot table. So if I just go to insert and I click pivot table, and then I click, just by default, it just shows, the entire table. And it says choose where to place the pivot table. I always put it in a new worksheet just because it's easier to just kind of work off of. You'll notice before I click OK, though, that there's like a lot of inconsistencies with this data. The only part that doesn't is the employee name, but these are all just, John Doe 1, Jane Doe 1, and etc. Just fake names. But for the office ID, you'll notice there's like a 101, 102. There's like a one like letter O2, and there's like a 105, but this is like a text which is indicated by that little green triangle up in the top left corner of this cell. There's also for the office names. They actually, imagine this is just this data, is entered by the employee, but they might not know exactly what the name of their office is, how to spell the name, what if there's like errors in the name, like how they spell it out. So we need to kind of clean this up for consistency. So that's kind of what we're going to do next. So if I click OK, so we have a pivot table, pivot table 6 that shows up here. I'm going to rename this from sheet 1 to just pivot table, so I just know exactly where to go to. And I'm going to throw the office ID onto the rows and the office name on to the rows as well. So, quickly here we see there's Armadillo has this office ID 101. Blackwater is spelled 3 different ways. Houston is the only one that doesn't have a problem. And 104, one person put in the Massachusetts, along with Boston. There's also just different names from New York, and we have to, there's 2 different row or office ID numbers. So let's go back and really quickly change this up. So if I go back to the calc data, I'm going to add a filter on here. I'm going to filter it just for 101. Just for 101. And now all I need to do is just drag this down. Alternatively to this, I could just click, if you're on a Mac, this is Shift Command down. If you're on a PC, this is Shift Control down. And then just click Command D or Control D, depending on whether it's your Mac or PC. And suddenly, they just update. And the thing, though, is that if I go back to the pivot table, and just notice I just incorrectly spelled that, I misspelled that. This does not update automatically. With a pivot table, you need to just manually refresh it for the data, for the underlying cache of data to be refreshed and to be updated. So if I right click on here and click refresh, boom, it is now fixed up. Let's do the same thing with 102 and 104. Oh, go back to the calc data. I changed this from 101 to 102. And I believe Blackwater is spelled like one word. Some of these are just made up places, by the way. All right, and I will just take that off. Let's go to 103. So Houston is okay. 104. Let's just call this just Boston. And 105. And we have to take off the 104. So you notice this little green triangle here if you click on it, on the little caution symbol, it'll say what the actual error is. Although this isn't really an error, this is more just like a heads up that it's currently stored as a text. And you can also see that in the formula bar. It has this little single quotation mark. So if you click convert to number, you can just quickly change that, and now it's all set. And we're also going to rename this New York. And then let me just remove this, go to the 102, and we're just going to call this 102. And I believe Blackwater is still right. So if we go back to the pivot table and then click on refresh all here, or you can right click and click refresh, it's all the same. Now we are in a good position. We have cleaned the data, and so it should look good. And it looks good. The next piece to this, before we get to the calc worksheet, is we create a Scratch worksheet. And we just call it Scratch work. And we take from here the office ID and office name, and we paste it here. And you can either press, you can copy and paste, or you can do copy and special paste, which is, if you're on a Mac, this is Command Option V. On a PC, this would be Control Alt V. So here you could put, you click values. You can transpose your data. You can paste like certain parts of it, like your column widths, your formats, your validation lists. This is a very powerful tool. We might maybe kind of cover this in a different at another time. Just go in depth on what like the different paste special tools do, because this is very powerful, and you can do it in a number of different ways. But just for now, I'm just gonna click on values. But here's the issue though, is I just want to get just one of every office ID and office name. So the next piece, the next step is to remove duplicates. So if you just go to data under like halfway across the ribbon, you'll find remove duplicates. If you click on that, and then you just click yes, because the list here has headers. You just click OK. And Excel will return to you the number of duplicate values found and how many were removed and what's left. The next piece to this is just copying this copying just this part, not the headers, and pasting it here in the office ID, office name section. So I'm just going to click Command V. And now the total expenses. So this equals SUMIF. If you're kind of curious about this function, we have a separate video on that. You can click on, for the range, go back to the calc data here, and then select the entire column. Or actually, I'm going to use the office ID. It's just a little bit safer to use something like a sort of like a number figure here rather than just like a name, in case just in case there might be some typos, but also it's a little bit easier to write out in terms of a formula. So the range here, if I go back to the calc data, this will be the office ID, comma, and the criteria. If I go back to the calc worksheet, will be this A6 here. And I do not want to lock the cell because we're not gonna drag this to the right. We're going to do something a little bit different, and the sum range is going to be, from our calc data, it's going to be the total expenses. If I press enter, we have 3,000. And I'm just going to go home, just format this up a little bit, a dollar sign. If I drag this down, or I double click this little green box here, this all comes flying down. And the sum here is 12,321. I want to get the sum here. So one thing I could do is I could click on this like summarize button, or just click sum, and then it'll just automatically create this sum formula. I press enter, and there we go. The thing is though, this worksheet, we get like different departments, different office IDs, and different office names each month. So we always want to leave a little bit of extra space. This might be a little bit too much for this fake example, but if we wanted to just hide these rows instead of just deleting all of them, but just to leave some, like blank ones just in case we have like some new office IDs, we can just go to data, we can group these rows, and now suddenly it looks just like a clean just table with like a total here at the bottom and your data up above. If we want to get the expenses that are just for operations, so this is kind of similar to the SUMIF, but we're actually going to do a SUMIFs. So I'm actually going to copy this formula and I'm going to paste it here. And now instead of the sum range being at the end, this is going to be at the beginning. So I'm going to copy this, the range and criteria part, because this is going to turn into the range and criteria, or criteria range 1 and criteria range 2. And then we're also looking for the employees who work in operations. So criteria range 2 is going to come from the employee type right here. Oh, so funny thing about this little like kind of pop-up, or this like formula helper, is you can move it around. Like you move it over there. So I'm going to click on calc data column DD, which actually has the employee type, and then comma for criteria I'm going to put in operations. If I press enter, we get $1,610 for the expenses from Armadillo for the operations staff. I'm just going to make that a dollar figure and just bring this down, and this comes out to $5,229. And now I'm just going to drag this to the right, and yep, we're going to get that same sum. Now, as a percentage of the total operations spend, we can, as a percentage of the total expenses, the operations spend accounts for, and we could just kind of make this with this kind of simple formula here. We can type equals D6 divided by this 12,321, and then we can just lock this row and make this a percentage symbol, maybe 1 decimal place, and we can just bring that down. And then we can also bring this sum to the right, but preserve the formatting so that we can see of the total expenses how much went to operations. The operations allocation, so this is going to be just an allocated out amount for the 10,000 based on what our travel bills were. And so we're gonna kind of put it right here. We're gonna go from this sheet, the calc worksheet, to the calc invoice, and then click on that 10,000 and just press enter. And the next piece is just a straight math calculation of product between the operations percentage times the travel bills. And then we're just going to lock this, the dollar sign in front of the 23, and then just bring that down. And then we can also copy and paste the sum from here to here, and then we get the total travel bills that are allocated to each of these offices for the operations staff. Now, corporate dollars, you might be thinking we could, like this next section, the corporate dollars, the percentage, the allocation, we can just kind of copy the formulas from here, and we could, but actually I think the easier way would just be to subtract from each office the operation expenses from the total expenses. So this will be C6 minus the operations dollars, and then we just drag this down. See, like one Houston is just all operations. There's no corporate staff there. And now if I just copy this formula here from here and paste it here, we have this 7,092, and then I can actually copy a lot of these formulas too. Okay, don't want to do that. and then Command V and paste it there. There's something kind of odd going on here, so let's kind of see what happened. So I did not lock the I did not lock the total expenses figure. So let's do that again. I'm just going to fix this formula up real quick. Copy that and then paste it here. Okay, there we go. That's looking a lot better. And now finally, we just want to first lock this before we copy and paste it. Copy that and then paste it here. And then if I copy this sum, paste it here, I get this 5,756. If I multi-select and then select this as well, I get 10,000. Now this is in a good place, this calculation worksheet. We'd be kind of all set by now, but let's do some sanity checks because there's no, like we want to make sure this data is 100% accurate. So if I go back to the pivot table, and if I copy this pivot table now that it's clean and go to the Scratch worksheet and paste it here in column E, let me take off the office ID and office name, and instead let me put on the employee type and then put on the total expenses. So I noticed that it looks like there's two operations, and as you can kind of see from the formula bar, one of them has an extra space, but it's hard to see. It's hard to notice. So let's go back to the calc data worksheet, and then let's filter just for the operations. And I think it's right about one of these. Oh, it's right here. Yeah, there's a space right there. So let's just highlight this entire, or select this entire cell range. And then just if I press Command D, this brings down all the values or formulas from the top. It just drags it down. And if I go back to the Scratch worksheet and then refresh this, now the two operations row labels have now just merged. So I get $5,746 and $6,575. Now if I go back here, I get, for staff, which is synonymous with corporate in this example, I get $6,575, and for the operations, I get $5,746, which is the same right here. So now this is in a good place. So from here we can, we can delete the calc invoice because this would be sent to finance and accounting, to put into the GL. And actually, one thing we'd probably want to do is just tidy up some of the formatting. So like, as you can see, there's like a $ here. This accounting, while this is currency. So let's make this all accounting. And there we go. Well, anyways, that kind of wraps up the business use case. If you have any questions or are interested in sort of like how to apply this to your own work, feel free to leave a comment below. Like, favorite, subscribe, all that stuff, and see you in the next video. Thank you. Take care. Bye.